So the advice of, on the animation, again, are tips and tricks, do's and don'ts, and things that we have seen developing video games through the years. Usually are that kind of things that we would like to have been told when we started. We will be covering animation blueprint retargeting, layering, flow control, ticking and performance, though we saw a bit on the overview section, how to better handle physics behavior, and animation sharing manager. So regarding retargeting, I just want to note that the animation blueprint can be also retargeted. Not only the sequences that is the most common thing that people do, but or skeletal meshes, but also the animation blueprint. So what we can do is to create a very basic animation blueprint that all of the characters in our game are going to do. Are going to do. If they're going to share a behavior, like a global behavior, all are going to jump, all are going to that kind of things. We can do that once and then share it along all the skeletons that we have. Okay, so it's, and then for any kind of particular behavior, we can then edit those. Instead of doing or copy pasting everything, we can retarget. So it's a much nicer way of organizing your project at the beginning. Then regarding layering, keep your state machine as simple as possible. As you can see here, for example, I have a very basic ground locomotion, idle, running, and such. But for example, to do the turnings, instead of adding them here and adding complexity, because turning is something that you only do when you're idling, I added them as an additional state machine inside the idle state. Okay, anything inside an state can be anything that you can put in the general flow. So just so you know that you can layer also state machines inside the state machine. It's not as visible as having everything together, but for the sake of debugging, it's going to be much easier. Yeah, and also when you're creating your flow, just try to put the most basic, like the things that are the big chunks of the animation before, and then add details later on. So it's easier for you, again, to debug, because I can connect this to the final pose and see what's happening. But the other way around is much more difficult if I try to, I don't know, put things in the middle and mix them together. Regarding flow control, just use slots mainly for React animations and things that you have to override. As I said, any kind of React, like being hit, or any kind of gameplay, for example, the attack that the character does is goes into this slot, for example. Use gameplay-driven animations into slots as montages usually, but also don't be afraid of caching. When I started, I always thought that caching so much will have a big overhead, but it doesn't. So just be creative as you use caching. Like as you can see here, we're caching a lot of poses, but it's not that particularly expensive. So don't be afraid of storing that and then mixing in a very creative way. What else? Ticking and performance. You can reduce the anim blueprint ticking. You can activate update rate optimizations on characters, on particular actors. That means that as we get far away from that character, from that actor, it's going to be tick in the anim blueprint less and less and less, enable update rate optimization, and you can even display by colors what is the rate of that character. So for example, if you get far away, you will see that it's changing its color to represent that it's ticking less and less and less, that anim blueprint. And as I said, as default, you can activate anim budgeter, and that's going to be like a more general way of dealing. So you don't have to think about that kind of little details. I'm going to make this character tick less or such. You can use the anim budgeter, and it's going to do it for you entirely. And also, when you are, this is also experimental, when you have big chunks of animation, generally for cinematics, so that you know that you can stream them in and out. So you can manage the memory as you go. Instead of, usually you should have to have everything loaded from the beginning to be able to play an animation, okay? Physics behavior, just good at physics asset setup, try to do the minimal behavior that you need. When you are doing that, be aware that you can set some bodies to be, for example, not in this example, in the example of the girl, so that you know that you can set some of those bodies to not react to physics. Like this one, for example, I have for the hair. If those are kinematic, that means that we'll use the animation, and if you select simulated, it will react to the physics. As I said, you can create physics profile. The good thing about physics profiles against doing that in the physics asset is that you can have several of those and change them in runtime. So you can have drunk physical behavior, and we will go like that, and suddenly change to a regular one. And to wrap up, the animation sharing manager can, as I said, can manage crowds, but you can randomize animations between those, so it's not as noticeable as you will thought, as you will think. You can add reaction animations on top of the animation that is being shared. So for example, if you're hitting one of those in the crowd, it will react nicely. And also, for example, in one example I did in one of my talks, you can add physics to them. So it's like a regular animation blueprint, but you can share that among a lot of different skeletal meshes, and then you can randomize, you can do a lot of things. And it's all managed by data, so you don't need a programmer to be setting that up. It's just clicking some properties and selecting them. So it's quite easy. And that's all.